welcome back to my channel. It's been a really long time since my last video, but I felt a lot of inspiration lately, and I feel like there's a good amount of things I can talk about. So after a long, much needed break, I'm back. I appreciate everybody who's still been here and those who have joined. Welcome. Today I want to talk about 15 lessons that I've learned from raising a toddler. So the last time that I made a video, I had a baby, and now I have a toddler. I have a daughter who is 2.5, and she's going to be 3 in just a few short months. And it's been a wild ride. It's been an amazing ride. It's been a challenging ride, and I've learned so much, and we've all grown together as a family, and I would love to share these lessons with you all today. Now, these are just my own experiences, and everyone has a different child, different experiences, different upbringings, different personalities. So many things go into how we raise our children, and so these are my experiences, and these are lessons that I learned, and maybe with some of these you can resonate, and maybe some of these are eye-opening for you, but take everything with a grain of salt, and hopefully something serves you today. So, we've all heard the sayings of terrible twos and three-nager, and I will be honest that I was worried for what's to come. Everyone would say, oh, your baby's gonna be too soon. Oh, you just wait. And I decided early on that I was not going to let that be my experience. I don't think it was ignorance. I don't want to lose, these 2-3 valuable years of my child's life because of some challenges that come with those years. So why is raising a toddler so hard? We have a baby and we become used to tending to the baby's physical needs, changing the diaper, making sure they're dry, warm, clean, making sure they're not hungry, making sure they're rested, and the baby just is there. There's no talking back that comes with it. No tantrums, none of that. It's mostly just taking care of a baby's needs. And then all of a sudden, we transition to a very opinionated child that has a lot of emotions and a lot of emotional needs and has a lot running through their head, and it's a lot different from raising a baby. So what causes these changes from infancy into toddlerhood? I'm kind of what would you call it? I wouldn't say a science nerd or anything, because honestly I hated science in school. But I love learning the why behind certain things. And so it was really fun to dive into what developmental changes happen throughout these toddler years that affect how a toddler behaves. And what I've learned is that a baby is born with all the neurons that they will ever have in their entire lives. From birth to around age 5, over 1 million neural connections are formed every single second, more than any other time in that child's life. These connections are formed from daily experiences and positive interactions with the caregivers around them. These connections enable the child to function emotionally, physically, and intellectually. Throughout development, a toddler's brain isn't balanced, meaning the right side of the brain is dominant over the left side of the brain. The left side of the brain takes a lot longer to develop than the right side. It takes up to 25 years for the left side of the brain to fully develop. The right side of the brain is responsible for emotional reactions, creativity, imagination, and intuition. The left side of the brain is responsible for impulse control, for logical thinking, and for emotional regulation. Often we expect our children to have our level of thinking, but it's just not possible at that age. Instead, it takes time for children to develop, and they learn from watching us model the type of behavior that we would like for them to have when they are older. So while these years are difficult for us, they're also difficult and overwhelming for toddlers as well. So let's get into the 15 lessons that I've learned from raising my toddler. Lesson 1. Toddlers will often act out or misbehave when a basic need isn't met. And by basic need, I mean they're hungry, they're tired, they're too hot, they're too cold, they're thirsty, they're overstimulated. And usually once that need is met, that bad behavior disappears. Usually the first thing I do when I notice my daughter is being cranky, or if she's acting out, is there a need that she has right now that isn't met? Is she hungry or thirsty? Is she cold or hot? And these are questions I ask her, getting to the bottom of the problem. The second lesson I learned is that connection is another very important need that if it's unmet, then the child will act out to get our attention. Oftentimes, if the only time that they can get our attention is by doing something that they're not supposed to do, and that's when we give our attention to them, they will keep doing that because they want to get our attention. We have to remember, as their parent, we are the most important person in their life. Especially if you only have one child, like I only have one child right now, minus the one that is developing right now inside of me. I am the only person, and my husband, but he works throughout the day. I'm her everything, and she has to connect just like we need to connect with our loved ones. We need to feel loved, we need to feel connection. We need to be hugged and held and kissed and talked with our loved ones to feel loved and to have that emotional connection. And kids are the same exact way. They need that too from us. And when they're not getting it, then they will start to do things to get our attention. I know that as moms, we are very busy, especially if you work from home. Plus there's cooking, cleaning, organizing. There's so many things that we're doing that it's just not possible to sit and play with your child all day long. So I find that taking 10 to 30 minutes several times throughout the day to connect with my daughter really helps for her to feel loved and heard and connected, and I can still continue to doing things that I need to do throughout the day. It's very helpful to set a timer and to let your child know, hey, I'm going to play with you for the next, let's say, 15 minutes. I am setting a timer for 15 minutes, and when the timer goes off, I have to go and do the dishes. And then we can reconnect again in a couple hours, or we can reconnect again when I'm done. This reminds your child that they have a certain amount of time of your undivided attention. And it also reminds them that that time will end and you have to go do certain tasks. It also reminds them that you will come back and you will have time to play again together and to connect. Doing things is important. It's inevitable. We will have a to-do list every single day, but we can't miss out on these years that just fly by. These toddler years are so short, and it's very easy to just get engulfed in a constant to-do list that we realize that we're just missing out on precious moments where we build relationships and connect with our children. Another lesson that I learned is that boredom can ignite creativity. It is good for your child to be bored sometimes. It's good for toddlers to experience boredom because it allows them to get creative with play. It can be tempting to turn on a show for them to watch all day long, but it's so rewarding and even fascinating to watch what they come up with when they are bored, when they have nothing to do. The fourth lesson that I learned is that less is more when it comes to toys. I find that my daughter plays the most with toys that inspire open-ended play, like Mega Blocks or Magnetiles or drawing easel, things that don't have like a rigid structure or concrete way to play and have an infinite amount of possibilities when it comes to their imagination. I also find that she loves to play with things that are meant to be toys, like building forts with blankets and couch cushions and pillows, and building book roads all over the house. That's something that she's been doing recently, where she builds a bunch of roads all over the house with books in a single line, and she jumps and skips over them and runs over them, and it's just takes up so much of her time. Another lesson that I learned is that toddlers understand so much more than we think they do. When we're learning a new language, we learn to understand first, and then we are able to speak. And it's the same way with toddlers. It's important to be mindful of our speech and our actions, because they copy everything that we do and say. They watch us and they learn, and this is how their brain is wired to develop. I've also learned to speak to my daughter clearly and use the right language and the right pronunciation and structure of words. It can be really tempting to repeat things back to them the way that they say it because it's so cute, but it can actually be really frustrating for them to have to learn things twice. Imagine learning a new language and somebody fluent in that language is repeating your pronunciation of that language to you. It can be really frustrating, and it's much more helpful for them to learn things the first time around correctly instead of having to do so twice. Lesson 6 is to let your toddler help. It can be really tedious and it takes so much longer to get things done, but it's so important for them to learn from us how to do things right. And with time, they get a lot better and faster at it, and over time we're able to pass off tasks and responsibilities to them, and it takes things off our plates. So it's a win-win in the long run. Allowing our toddler to help us also serves as a connection for them. As I mentioned before, neural brain connections are made through positive interactions and through hands-on experiences. Having your toddler help you serves as both. Some simple ways that we do this in our home is I allow my daughter to help me switch the clothing from the washer into the dryer, putting the dishes away, and holding a measuring spoon or a measuring cup as I pour the ingredients into it and then pouring that into the bowl. Simple things like this that are age appropriate and kids are able to do, and they get better at doing it over time. The 7th lesson that I learned is that, at least in our case, we don't need a rigid schedule for my toddler to thrive. Routines are really good. I find that very rigid schedules don't give much room for developmental things that toddlers go through, like sleep progressions. And sometimes toddlers, they need a nap, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're more tired, sometimes they're less tired. Sometimes they have a bigger appetite, sometimes they have a smaller appetite. They're just like us. We don't have a very rigid way of doing things. We live based off of the needs of our bodies, and toddlers are the same exact way. Their needs fluctuate depending on many factors, just like us. They're not robots, they're humans. Growth spurts don't stop at 12 months. Toddlers continue to get growth spurts, and their sleep and behavior is impacted during those growth spurts. Flexible routines keep that in mind and support the toddler's needs during those times. Another thing I learned is to give my toddler choices. It shows them that you have the power to give them choices, but at the same time puts them in control of the options available to them. This makes them more likely to choose to do something that you are offering to them than just saying no or refusing to do what you want them to do. It also makes them feel like their opinions and their feelings matter, which they do matter to us. Lesson 9 is setting boundaries is so important. This teaches toddlers what they can or can't do. But you have to be consistent for them to understand the seriousness of the boundary. You can't just allow something one day and not allow it the next day, and vice versa. Because then they will understand that the boundary can be pushed or changed, or if they cry enough or act a certain way, that you will change your mind. Another very important lesson that I learned is that what toddlers eat can have a very big impact on their behavior. For an example, eating a snack or a meal with just carbs and no protein or fat is very likely to cause a blood sugar spike and then a drop, and that's when the bad behavior comes. This leads to emotional moodiness and outbursts, and it just can't be controlled. The same thing happens with us adults. It's the way our bodies react. Artificial food coloring or food dyes also have a very big impact on a child's behavior. Food dyes are banned in many countries. Unfortunately, they're not banned in our country yet. But they are banned in many other countries due to many negative effects observed in children, such as hyperactivity, lack of attention, mood swings, aggression, headaches, sleep problems, and many more negative reactions. These dyes are petroleum-based, and you can find them listed in ingredient lists such as red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, red 3, blue 1, blue 2, green 3, etc. These dyes are often mixed with certain preservatives in food, and preservatives are also linked with behavioral problems. The most common preservatives found in foods that are linked to behavioral problems are sodium, and I might be saying these wrong, I probably am, but sodium benzoate, BHT, BHA, and TBHQ, nitrates and nitrites, and MSG. MSG is an excitotoxin, which is a chemical that overstimulates the brain and exhausts neurons to death. This effect is particularly evident in the part of the brain that is responsible for behavior, emotions, onset of puberty, sleep cycles, and immunity. MSG also stimulates the taste buds in the mouth and enhances the flavor of food, causing that food to be craved more. MSG can also be listed on ingredients lists as hydrolyzed protein, autolyzed yeast, and sodium caseinate. A diet high in sugar can also lead to behavioral problems. Undiagnosed food allergies, such as dairy, nuts, eggs, corn, and soy, can also lead to behavioral problems. It's so important to be mindful of your toddler's diet because very often children are reprimanded for something that they just don't have control of. They can't control how their body responds to certain chemicals such as food dyes and certain food preservatives. Another important factor is that toxins in the home not only cause health problems but behavioral problems as well. Examples include fragrances and chemicals that are often found in candles, air fresheners, cleaning and laundry supplies, beauty and hygiene products, scented toys, and so on. I will be sharing safe, non-toxic products that we use in our home and that we love over the next few months, if you are interested. Lesson 12 is breastfeeding toddlers might eat less than a toddler that's not breastfeeding, and that's totally normal and okay. Breast milk doesn't lose nutrients as a child ages, and it is still tailored to their needs at 6 months, at 12 months, 18, at 36 months. My daughter, she always was a snacker. She pecked at food from the moment that we introduced solids from 8 months, and My milk supply dried up at around 12 weeks of this pregnancy, and my daughter had just turned around two and a half. And as soon as that happened, she started eating everything. I have never seen her eat so much. Had I known that she was going to have such a great appetite for solid food, I would have never worried. Another lesson that I learned is that just like us, toddlers have good and bad days. And sometimes they handle bad days much better than we handle our bad days. A bad night of sleep or hormonal changes, sickness, or strangers coming over, strangers to them that they don't know. All of these things have the power to influence their mood, just like us too. Hi. I love you. Hi. Bye. Extending grace is so important, just like we expect from others for ourselves too. Lesson 14. Your toddler is not a copy of you. They have their own personality, their own character, their own differing needs. They can't think and act exactly like us. Sometimes it's worth letting them figure out their own way of doing something. You'll be surprised to see that usually they can come up with safe solutions to problems that make sense and are just not done in a way that we would have done it ourselves. And lastly, as I mentioned before, toddlers copy so much of what we say and do. Be the example of who you want them to be. This includes doing uncomfortable things like apologizing when we mess up, because we'd expect them to apologize when they mess up too. We get them to act a certain way if we are modeling a completely different way. It's wrong to punish them for something that they learned from us. A quote that I love says, "If I expect my children to be kind, gentle, compassionate, and respectful, I must be kind, gentle, compassionate, and respectful. Children do not listen to the instructions of hypocrites. It is your actions that guide their actions, not your lectures or punishment." By Rebecca Eanes. This list doesn't include everything. Raising my daughter has taught me so much more. When I got married, I realized how selfish and imperfect I was and how much growth I needed. And then I had a child and I realized even more of the things that I need to work on and where I need to grow. I truly believe this is why God designed family and marriage to be the way that they are. It's to purify us and to lead us to be more like Him. God gave us wonderful tools that help us grow and keep us accountable, such as marriage and motherhood. Raising a child has taught me so much about God and His patience and grace, mercy, kindness, and especially unconditional love towards us. I hope you enjoyed that list. I hope you resonated with some of that and maybe you learned something new, and I'm sure you have something that I haven't thought of or haven't learned yet. So please share that in the comments. I also want to give a little life update. Since the last video I posted, we've moved 3 times. We've moved from Mexico to Arizona, then from Arizona to California, and here we've moved twice. We've had so many changes, but that's life. It's never what we expect or plan on, and it can be so confusing at times. But I wouldn't change anything about our journey. It has been full of so many valuable lessons, and we've grown so much through it all, individually, in our marriage, as a family, and in our relationships with God. I also have a new pregnancy. I'm in my 3rd trimester now. We have waited for this baby for so long, and this baby is so wanted, and I just can't wait to share more about this pregnancy journey and our interesting trying to conceive journey and my extended breastfeeding journey with my daughter. So thank you for being here with me today, and I will see you all next week.